The next critical element within your contract need to be the definitions. Now, you know you're buying software. You know you're buying a subscription to a cloud-hosted solution. But what does that mean? You need to be real clear in your contract on what these things mean to you and the vendor. And if there is a disagreement on what that means, then you have a problem within your contract. So we would recommend really defining what the cloud means, because to a vendor, could it be one server somewhere in someone else's house? Or is it a multi-location, co-located space where they have multiple locations where your data is going to live? What is the definition of cloud? The second thing is, how do you define software as a service? Some lawyers will argue that you need to define what software means. You need to define what service means. And how do these things come together? So really define what software as a service means to you and what your obligations are versus what the vendor's obligations are to make sure that the software is up and running at all times. I think the most important definition in any contract should be the definition for go live. In my experience, the vendor will try to define what go live should mean to you. To them, it means, is the system implemented? Is it installed in your servers? Are the lights blinking green and there are no reds? But meanwhile, you can't run payroll checks and you can't pay your vendors. So what does go live mean? Make sure you define go live when you do phase one of your project, which needs to be the definitions, the requirements, getting ready for an implementation. And at that time, you need to really define what go live means to you in the context of your day jobs. If you're a school system, if you're a police department, you all have day jobs and you all have day-to-day functions you do that the public trusts you with. So if a vendor comes in and says, we're going to go live on Jan 1 or March 1, and it happens to be the audit week or something very important is going on, it doesn't make sense to have a go live day then. So the first thing to do when defining go live is really looking at your exception calendar. What dates is your team not available? What are blackout dates? What are vacation dates? You need to define that at a very, very detailed level, and then you can have a fuzzy go live date. Go live dates tend to be, in my opinion, fuzzy because you need to have wiggle room in case the vendor doesn't deliver. In case the software doesn't do what it's supposed to do, you need to have the room to back out of a predetermined go live date and push it out to a more convenient date. But remember, the vendor is going to say a go live is per their definition when the product's installed and implemented. To you, it should be, is it useful? And all of that needs to be defined and included in a contract or a master service agreement. In any contract, the vendor is going to ask for a price escalation year on year, especially in a SaaS contract when you're buying a subscription to their product. Price escalations are built into many kinds of contracts. We've seen those in construction contracts, software development contracts, but in a SaaS contract, it's a little different. You can cap it, and of course, when you're negotiating a contract, you have to be cognizant of the fact that there will be some price escalations, but the vendor is going to throw out the biggest price escalation per year they can at you. Now, you can refuse to do that. You can throw out other terms that you want and really get to a point where you're not paying too much more as an escalation year on year for the same product. In many cases, we see that the vendor will ask for a large sum of money upfront or all of it upfront, but their product takes a year and a half to implement and be useful. Don't do that. This goes back to our discussion on how do you structure pricing and payments and milestones. But at the same time, you have to plug in the escalation clause here too, because why would you pay 3% more for a product that hasn't gone live in year 2? So defining what that timeline looks for you, defining what escalations mean, defining what your cap for escalations is, and really what the milestones are within the implementation timeline should dictate how you define this in your contract. Because keep in mind, a software as a service contract, if done right, this should be the one product you use for the lifetime of the organization, or at least for your term or tenure at the organization. So price escalations are an important part of a SaaS agreement, but also there is no one standard. If the vendor proposes something ridiculous, you have every right to go back and say, no, we're not going to pay 10% year on year, but we can agree to 2% after 3 years. So think about how you want to define price escalations.